Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a mailbox. I need a little break from working on this video. And plus, you guys have been firing emails at me, unsurprisingly, pretty hefty since Legion Alpha launched, and we've had various content come out from that. So I hope you're enjoying the Legion content. It's huge, man. It's taken me so long to research it all and try and get it all in my head. Mistakes are about to happen at some point, but it's no big deal. In general, the overview and this data mine stuff, as we haven't actually played with a lot of it besides the Demon Hunter, is really good. Really good. Doing my best is what I could say. Doing my best with working long hours. So there is Demon Hunter footage in this video. So if you don't want to be spoiled by anything to do with Demon Hunter, please Alt-Tab or minimize now. And none of the content I'll be discussing is directly referencing Demon Hunters. So you should be safe. Okay? 3, 2, 1. Alright then, so the first question in, Preacher, after reading a lot of the stuff that's coming in Legion, are you worried about the melee bloat, not only with survival and of course Demon Hunters, but in fact the amount of pets that seem to be adding to the game? Oh, fuck yeah, dude. Melee bloat in terms of like actually being in melee, I mean I'm a melee player, you know that, right? Luckily I have a decent high-end PC, so it's not too bad for me, but WoW still runs a bit potato-ish even at the very top end. Like you can't get mega FPS all the time with WoW, the game just isn't designed that way. And the fact that, you know, I've seen Unholy DKs can have a chance to proc Army of the Dead. That's a lot of stuff that's coming in. Beastmasters are throwing in a lot of pets. They're all summoning Dire Call. Legion, the demo locks are going to be summoning a lot of pets. Not to mention the fact that we will have the survival guys in there and the Demon Hunters. They said there was a quote. I tried to find it, but I couldn't see it. But I know it was made recently. It's one of those things that I know I read. I just can't seem to find it right now. Is that Legion will be far more melee friendly. I don't know what that means. I don't know how that'll play out. I think that might be something they try and do and will probably peter out towards the end. That tends to be what happens with these sort of ideas, is they try, but if it's too good or too easy, or more particularly, if ranged have a particularly bad time in comparison to melee, people start switching, and they don't want that either. They don't want people abandoning their class because it's easier or anything along those lines. So I will hold judgment on that. I think the addition of the raid graphics thing is valuable in this scenario because there's going to be so much going on with melee. And we've seen in the past there are some boss abilities that just cloud what's under your feet in so many occasions, or you have to dodge and you're trying to look for somebody to be with and following pets and you see all the pets run around. That tends to be when it gets more confusing in a high-paced battle, is when bosses sort of turn to target and do abilities and all that kind of stuff. The pets spread out really, really sort of randomly as they all try to get round to the back of the boss. And that can always just create this huge mire of graphical stuff that's going on around you. And it can be difficult if you're also doing a very complex encounter that has, you know, various things going on under your feet and things to dodge and abilities that are coming swooshing at you from another side, you know, directed attacks, all this kind of stuff. It can get messy. I don't think there's a solution for it that I can think of. I'm worried about it for sure. I think it's a definite concern, as not everybody has access to a really high-end PC, nor should they have to. So hopefully the raid graphics thing will sort it out, but I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced with the sheer abundance of stuff that's going to be coming into melee range while we're doing, especially raid encounters. If you're looking at 20-man mythic, or certainly if you're doing sort of heroic flex and normal flex and you've got like 30 people in there, that could get really extreme. Really extreme. What you don't want is situations which can occur sometimes, but it's rare, where raid leaders are asking people not to play certain specs because it causes a lot of problems for the melee. I bring that up because there were certain toys that people could use in Walls of Draenor. I know in my guild there were certain people who had trouble with you turning into the Tauren, the trinket that turned you into the Tauren Warmaster guy. I can't remember it. Grom, maybe? Something along those lines. Who turned into that, and it was actually causing lag for people, and there was a ban on it. I used to convince Trials that they should pop it so I could swap blast them just to see the raid leader moan at them. All good fun. But still, yeah, it's a little... I totally get where you're coming from, man. I really get where you're coming from. It could go absolutely absurd. And hopefully it won't, is all I'm going to say there. Hopefully it won't. Hopefully they have something in mind that's going to solve it. Maybe it'll just be the case of you can only see your pets. But I hope not at the same time, because for those of us who can handle those graphics, it's always nice to see it, especially if I'm recording. I mean, it's very selfish of me to say, but if I'm recording, I would like the option to be able to see everything that's going on, to give a real nice cinematic perspective, because I enjoy the cinematics of WoW when everyone's in combat. I think it looks gorgeous. It certainly surpasses most other MMOs I've ever seen. When everybody's in group combat, it can actually look pretty tremendous if you cast your eyes away from all the activity just to drink in the scenario. It's something I talked about heavily in Kata, is there are certain classes that allow you to drink in the environment and take your time without making too many mistakes, and I always like that, so we'll see We'll see how it's going to go. The legendary thing. Are you not going to make any more legendary videos? And are you ashamed of the video you made? No, not in the least. I stand by everything I said there. I would say, yes, I did say on the web show it was the worst day in my YouTube career. It absolutely was, without question, the worst day. Because I've never misjudged my audience so heavily. I absolutely did not expect the reaction that I got. I'll say that without a shadow of a doubt. And I was unprepared because I don't usually deal with the guys directly. A lot of my content is raid focused, and that's what I enjoy about the game, and that's where I try and push many players into becoming better so they can go into raids and experience some of the things that I really enjoy. That's why we have a YouTube channel, right? To talk about the things we enjoy. And as such, I expected most people to be raiders, which is not true. And something I need to be fully aware of. Not that I will alter my content in any way particularly, but obviously we do bigger videos now. We're also starting to include other games, and people have seen that, and people have had big messages from me about the future plans that are going forward through the Patreon. All those kind of things are happening, and we're moving into new areas because we beat WoW. We did the #1 spot on YouTube for World of Warcraft, and it's time to move into other things. So Legion is a nice stepping point to get that out of the way and start introducing other stuff. So you'll see some evidence of that. What was surprising, the Shane thing, and I think the saddest thing I called there was an anti-casual. My argument was, I believe it was pretty simple. It was, is there not just a middle ground we can reach here? Does it have to be the absolute best quality stuff in the game put out into the open world? Is there no other way we could do that? And I think that's a pretty reasonable argument. I understand that casual players, and whatever that word means, people were offended that I used the word casual. There's no other word to start throwing around rather than doing guess words. It's whatever you want it to mean, I suppose. It's nothing really to do with me. That's the phrase that gets tossed around, so that's what we're using. That's what we're going with. I don't particularly like it as it encompasses like millions of people, and to be that general is pretty ridiculous, and which is why I said, let's just say it's anybody who doesn't raid, but people got offended by that as well, so I can't really win on that stamp. But all I suggested, my entire point of the video is, look, this does cause problems for people, as much as people denied that, despite the fact this is raging on to this day. You can go on any forum related to World of Warcraft and see that there is huge debate going on about this, yet people will still say this causes no issue. Well, obviously it does, because this war is still raging on my video, in comments on WoW Europe, WoW US, and the MMO Champion. All these things are still going on in multiple threads. There is clearly an issue here. Whether you understand it or not is irrelevant. It is an issue for a lot of players. And my suggestion was, my anti-casual suggestion was, guys want character progression? I totally get that. I'm on board with that. You should have a route of progressing your character outside of raiding. Of course you should. What's the problem there? You can even get mythic quality gear for all I care. If you wanted it to be orange because that's what you're excited about, why not make it something that's like mythic quality that upgrades every time a new raid tier comes out, so you always have the latest mythic quality item, and that's why it's legendary, because it keeps scaling. All these kind of things are things we could have discussed, but the reaction that I actually got was, no, Preacher. The absolute best quality items in the game is the only solution to our character progression. And I don't get that. I don't think that's fair. I don't see why there isn't an amicable middle ground there. Why can't there be something else? Why does it have to be the absolute best quality stuff? Because that causes problems for other people. And I see it as, I just don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair that that's your stance and there was no negotiating there. There was not a single comment on my video, at least, and I haven't seen one anywhere else who are the guys who are in support of the system who have even entered the idea that maybe, just maybe, it doesn't have to be the absolute best stuff in the game that comes from there. And it seems to be a huge step up from WoD, where it was like Tanaan stuff, and now the Mythic Dungeon stuff, which has gone over quite badly. Not a lot of people are chasing item level, despite what you might think. They're just not. They don't want to do that content. It doesn't matter if it's giving absurd rewards. They just don't want to do group content, and that's totally fine. You don't want to do group content. That's cool. I don't think the only other solution to that is the absolute best quality items in the game. I don't see how that works. A lot of people were saying it's too early to talk about it. I don't think so. We know how these items drop. We know a list of them. We know that they're irreplaceable because that's how they're being sold to us. We know lots and lots of things to start asking questions. And I always reserve the point where we can actually discuss things until it's relevant time. I will hold back. I'm not going to go into the sandbox mode and start showing you just pictures of the class halls and stuff. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to wait till Blizzard's like, yeah, okay, it's ready for testing now. I'm not going to jump the gun. We have plenty of information, more so than most other things in Legion regarding the legendary items, and it's definitely worthy of discussion. If it's super rare, a lot of people say, well, it'd be super rare, Preacher. You don't need to worry about it. You're crying, you're whining, and all things in between. If it's super rare, honestly, that affects raiders even more if you give it a moment's thought. From the casual perspective, or I mean, I hate that word, but you get the idea. From the non-raiding perspective, if the item is super, super rare, then it's more of a choice to those guys that they don't have to go for it because there's a very low chance you'll get it. However, if you can even put your mentality into the idea of somebody who really cares about his damage, or really cares about his tanking, or really cares about his healing, to tell them that there's an item out there that gives them a permanent, for the remainder of the expansion, which would be a couple of years, permanent, maybe up to, we've seen calculations that go up to like 45% on some of these items, bonus to that character for the remainder of the expansion. And to say that's out there, they're far more incentivized than guys who aren't going to get much benefit from it to go and farm it. So it hurts them even more if it's rarer, if I'm being completely honest. If they can target it in some manner, which we know they can, they will certainly be doing their best. A lot of people are saying, oh, well, raid leaders force you to do this. And this was probably a lot of the big argument, is a lot of miseducation of what non-raiders see raiding as like, although they don't actually know what it's like. Raid leaders don't need to tell a raider to go and get items that increase their damage, healing, and tanking. That's actually part of the mentality of being a raider. They see it as this sort of like, I mean, not everybody thinks this, obviously, but plenty of people seem to think that raiding is like you join a guild and then this raid leader barks at you all the time, telling you what to do step by step. That's not the case. No raider needs to be told to go and get the best weapons he can. He wants to do the most damage he can. That's part of the fun. And yeah, so there was a lot of miseducation there. There were a lot of people buying into the vanilla had these kind of items. I even saw Staff of Jordan mention it. It's just like a really low-level item. And the Skull Flame Shield. There were no items ever in the game, in the history of the game, that were anything like this. Not at all. I don't know why Blizzard's touting it as you'll be as excited as you were in vanilla. Maybe they're just trying to say, well, it's like when you got a world drop epic, but it's not the same thing because those things had absolutely no real impact on the end game at all. There was nobody in Blackwing Lair using a Skullflame shield unless you were ludicrously bad with drops. That just didn't occur. And so I don't know where that argument came from. There was a lot of things in that I just didn't understand. So whatever. I mean, I can't debate it. I'm not going to not make content on it because there's bound to be more information coming on it, and I'll gladly discuss it because it's worth discussing for most of my audience. It's absolutely worth discussing. But I'm not going to be ashamed but I certainly don't believe it's anti-casual to say maybe, just maybe, this doesn't have to be the best stuff in the game. I don't think that's anti-casual at all. There are so many other ways this could go. And if you look in the description, I just said it just didn't have to be this way. It just didn't have to go down that way. And so if they're disabled as well, that was another one. So if they're going to be disabled, I don't think they can do that. I really don't think they can do that. Maybe at Mythic only they'll get away with that, assuming that these raiders are in some sort of different tier of mentality. But I assume if anybody does get one, then being told there are parts of the game where you just can't use them, PvP will probably go sort of hand in hand. I think people will expect that. But these are PvE items. Whether you like it or not, they are PvE items. And then to say, well, you've got this legendary irreplaceable item, but you can't use it in certain forms of raiding, those people are going to be super pissed. And it's just one of those systems, and this was kind of my point again, is one of those systems that's creating more problems than it's solving. I understand there's a need for outside world environments. In fact, I was very much disgusted with those that blame raiders on the lack of world content in Walls of Draenor. It shouldn't take anybody of reasonable thinking to spend a couple of seconds and say, well, that can't be true, because the players had no involvement in deciding Walls of Draenor. And there was a lot of misinformation there again. Well, raiders only log in for raiding. Well, of course we do. There's nothing else to do in Walls of Draenor. In fact, we got lucky. It wasn't because of design. It wasn't because of raging. There was certainly no forum posts where raiders were proclaiming from the rooftops, please destroy the world content and just make raiding. That never happened. That never happened. It just turned out that of the problems Walls of Draenor, which it had many of, is that raiding was okay. When we were lucky in that respect. But the idea, and again, this is sort of the perception or the projection, I suppose, that raiders only want to raid is ludicrous. Ludicrous. There are very, very few people who only want to raid. They want to just log in, raid, and log out. Very, very few people like that. Maybe one per guild or a couple. The rest of the people want to raid and then go and do stuff in smaller groups and go and do other stuff. We all want to do that. We absolutely all want to do that. I want to do that. In Walls of Draenor, I completed all the world content I could possibly do, every reputation, everything on my rogue in the first 10 days. Why? I was drinking in the game. I was going exploring. I was doing all these things. And that's what I wanted it to continue. But unfortunately for me, Legion's WoD's world content ran out for me in 10 days. So beyond that point, if I was to log my main character, there was nothing to do, similar as there's nothing to do for most other people. We all suffered from it. And to wish that that's you got catered to, I don't know what that means. That's just, we got good raids. We were lucky. It wasn't catered to in any way. Tanan gave gear that was ridiculously high level, right? It was almost up to mythic standards of raiding. They added that back into mythic dungeons at the end. Now you can go and get that. And to say raiders were catered to is just saying you had good content. We did. We're not going to deny that. But that was luck. And we would far prefer to have had good raids and good world content. Of course we would. We want stuff to do outside of the game. I don't want to pay for a monthly for a game where I log in and do all that. Anyway, without getting too much around, no, I didn't understand. I didn't see one really reasonable argument. I saw the argument that it's fun. I totally agree. It is absolutely fun. That could come in a myriad of different ways, though. It doesn't have to just be the only solution to have fun in WoW is to randomly drop the best items in the game. That's just not true. It's absurd. There are many other options that we can go down with, many other routes. And if it's power you want, like I said, give the current mythic items, that's fine. I don't care. Most people won't care. It doesn't make an actual difference to the game, but at least it's equal. At least it's not pushing people into content they don't want to do. And I agree that recently, Blizz has tried to push a lot of people into raiding. The only reason they're doing that is not because they believe the game should only be raiding. They know as well as we do the raids are pretty good. And they're hoping that you will stick around and stay subscribed if you go raiding and you enjoy it. The fact of the matter is there are plenty of people who've tried raiding and just don't enjoy it. And that push hasn't worked. Similarly, as it won't work with trying to push people into content they don't like now. The only thing that will happen is the raid guys who are pretty serious about their own character will go ahead and just farm their ass off straight away. And yeah, that's the be-all and end-all of that discussion, I'm afraid. No, I'm not ashamed. No, I'm not upset with my own voice there or disagree with my own comments or had a rethink. Absolutely not. I think it was a totally fair argument to have, and I'm genuinely quite sad we couldn't have that debate. I'm really quite sad about it. All right, guys, thank you very much for listening. Any other questions, please send them to preachgaming@gmail.com. I'll do my best to get to them, but as you know, I'm working on some big videos right now. Thank you very much. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.